Mr. Birdie, members of the board, we do have several items for board discussion this evening. Our first item is the 5-year forecast. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Lane.
Thank you. Mr. Birding, members of the board, I have for your discussion tonight a look at our updated 5-year forecast. And just to review our slide that appears every time I present this, the reason why we do this. So it's to engage the Board of Education and the community in our long-range planning and discussions of financial issues facing the school district. It also serves as a basis for determining the school district's ability to sign off on the certificate known as the 412 certificate, and also to provide a method for the Department of Education and Auditor State to identify school districts with potential financial problems. We are not one of those districts right now, thank goodness. Also, I just wanted to give the board an update on where we stood at the end of the year. So I gave the last forecast in May. June 30th is the end of our fiscal year. So just wanted to update you and let you know that we did finish a little bit better than we had projected. Our revenues came in a little bit higher and our expenses were a little bit down. So we finished about $880,000 better than what I had projected. So it's good news. Revenues for this year are estimated to come in at a little over $100 million. And as you can tell, our real estate is the majority of where our revenue is generated. And also with unrestricted state aid, our state funding is the second largest piece to that revenue. Tonight, I'm just going to talk about 3 of those categories. Again, the real estate, the unrestricted state aid, and I'm going to talk about restricted state aid because there's some movement there with the new school funding formula. So under property taxes, our property valuation for 2020 is a little over $1.7 billion, and 70% of that is residential and agricultural property, where about 26% is from commercial and industrial values. I am projecting that our collections will remain steady throughout the forecasting period. And just to give you an idea of how much that's going to be, for this year, we're looking at about $46.3 million that we're estimated to receive from property taxes. And again, slight increases for the remainder of the forecast in property taxes. So unrestricted grants and aid, otherwise known as state funding, state foundation, Ohio Fair School Funding Plan, several different names. But this is probably one of the biggest changes to the forecast that we've seen in a couple of years. So the biennial budget was adopted for this fiscal year and for next fiscal year. And they came up with the plan to adopt a new strategy for funding. And I'm trying to do my best to explain it. It's not clear totally yet because the Ohio Department of Education is still trying to figure out how this funding system is going to work. So we have not received all of our information and probably won't until next month. But the district itself receives about $7,160 per pupil. Of that, you see the state share is about $3,000 and the local share is about $4,000. This new funding plan has 4 different components, and those components are based on historical data. There's also a big piece, important piece, is student enrollment comes into play now, which hasn't, for us, been a piece of the puzzle for a while because we've been in what they call a cap district. So yes, as we have kids move in and out, it really didn't affect our funding. Now it does. So starting this year, basically any student that's in a seat in our district we get funded for. Resident students could be our open enrollment students, but that's what they base our funding on, those kids that are actually here. Before this year, we received funding for students that attended community schools. And then later on in the foundation funding, that money was taken away. So now we don't have any of those receiving money for students that really aren't here in our schools. So we're going to see a shift later on. I'll explain that to you about those expenditures are no longer coming out of our expenses. So we'll see a drop in expenses, but also a bit of a drop in revenue. But overall, the net effect is favorable for us. So, and I'll get to that in just a minute.
And it feels more equitable, quite honestly, right?
Right. So for this year, we actually see a bit of of a drop of about $1.4 million in our funding, so we're down to about $32 million. But now that money has shifted a bit to the restricted funding, which is why I want to explain that to you in a minute. But after this year, we're projecting a bit of an increase for next year. And then after that, basically, I'm projecting what's going to happen, but I have no idea what's going to happen because we're only locked in for those 2 years. We only know what's going to happen for those, and then a new biennial budget will be passed, which they can alter this funding formula then. So pretty conservative for the remainder of the forecast as far as what we're going to receive in state funding. So restricted funding is basically money we receive from the state that we have to use. It's restricted. We have to use it on certain categories. In the past, it's been for such things as like a catastrophic cost for like special education. So now they are taking our Student Wellness and Success Fund, which was a separate fund altogether, which was not on the forecast at all, and basically putting that money in the restricted. So now I have to put it in the forecast. It looks like a big increase, but really we've been getting it. But now they're just going to put it in the general fund. Okay. And they're still going to restrict us on how we use it. So some of the items we've used it for in the past have been mental health supports, community partnerships, such as with our success program liaisons. We have some English language liaisons that help us. We've used it for that, and also our school resource officers. So we'll continue to use that. We received about $1.2 million last year, and that's a number that hasn't been revealed yet to us, but I'm anticipating it to be about the same amount. So I'll know more in December.
But you said we can still use it for the partnership, ELL, and the SROs?
Yes. So overall, our total revenue from last year to this year has increased. We're projecting it to increase about $1.1 million. So, and then you'll see in the rest of the years of the forecast, it is increasing a little bit each year. Moving on to expenses. We are projecting about almost $105 million in expenses this year. And as always, our salary and benefits, because we are a personnel-based business, accounts for the majority of our expenditures. I did include 4% increases in all the other categories besides salaries and retirement benefits because of the inflation that's happening. And I don't know if 4% is going to be enough based on what we're seeing in prices, but I did build that in on each of those categories for us. Salaries, the increases for 21-22 and 22-23 school years are based on our negotiated agreements. Those will end June 30th of 23. We'll be back in negotiations. So for now, we're just projecting 2% increases after fiscal year 23. And then I've also listed some of our additional staffing positions for this year. Some of those positions are not paid out of general fund, but I just wanted the board to have an awareness that, such as the integration coaches, that was to help with our technology one-to-one program. So those are being paid out of ESSER funds, which are not included in the forecast. For the following years, very little, if any, additional positions, as we know it right now. But from time to time, I know we approach the board about additional positions for special education students that are enrolled. We don't know what's going to happen from year to year, so there's no additional positions added. But then we also have fluctuations in enrollment sometimes where we may have to cut one here but add another one there, so it works out. So for now, we haven't added any additional positions but the ones you see there. So we continue to see those increasing expenditures for salaries, mainly due to the salary increases each year for personnel. Retirement and benefits, we did receive notification that our medical insurance will increase by 9% effective January 1st. We've done really well with those increases in the past, but with everything that's happening right now, the trend is much higher than that for the districts around us, so we're lucky that we only received a 9% increase. I did increase the projected increases for the remaining years of the forecast based on that increase we received this year. So I used to usually put 10% in there, and I've increased that to 12% based on some of the trend that we're hearing about. So total retirement insurance kind of follows the same trend line as we have for salaries. This year, we're anticipating about $20.5 million in that category. Purchase services has a lot of information on the next couple slides, and I just want to point out for this one, this is not an all-inclusive list, but I've tried to highlight some of the things that Mr. Perry and his staff have identified as some priority, some needs for us that need to be addressed. So for this year, again, that elimination of those community school deductions amounts to almost $4 million for us, which is huge. So that's why you'll see a drop in the purchase service category from last year, is that we no longer have those deductions being taken out. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but there's a lot of things happening at many different buildings. Again, as Mr. Perry is here longer, I'm sure he'll identify more things. But these are the ones that we feel like need to be addressed in the next couple of years. 24 and 25, same type of thing. It's harder for us to identify things that far out because we know that priorities may change. But a lot of flush valves and faucets and basic things like that need to be repaired. So our purchase services, again, I gave you last year's amount in there just to show you how that deduction is happening this year. So we're projecting about $11.5 million to be spent this year. Okay, here's the next one, qualifier again. This is not all-inclusive. Capital outlay is mainly equipment. As you can see, chillers and roofs and HVAC are important items that we need to make sure are working properly. So those are mentioned quite a bit throughout those first couple of years in the forecast.
Didn't we spend extensively on the Creekside roof HVAC here recently?
We've done some work.
Some work, so that
but not
wasn't
all.
complete.
No.
Okay, sorry.
And then we also are setting aside money each year, almost each year, for some district concrete repairs and flooring, things like that. So our capital outlay, and this does not include, most of the time, it does not include technology purchases because we are using our ESSER money to make those purchases for our student laptops. And that is pretty heavy for the next couple of years because that grant expires in '24. So our technology, most of our technology purchases are running through our ESSER funds, which is not included in this forecast. So we'll have to address kind of our needs as we get closer to that expiration of that grant. But for now, those are not real, there's no really much technology included in here. Annual expenditures, you can see, are increasing quite a bit each year. They are outpacing our revenue. I'm going to give you a better picture of that. So the blue section is our revenue, and our orange section are our expenses. The green trend line is our cash balance, and as you can see, by 2026, we're out of cash. Again, there's a lot of things that can change and will change by the time that 23 hits even. But, we're trying to make our last levy, which was in 2011, that was only supposed to last 2 or 3 years. I mean, we're up to year 10, so I think we're doing pretty well with what we've been given. But eventually, it is going to run out. So to give you a better picture, it shows that we are deficit spending. We're projecting about $4.3 million that we are going to be spending more than what we're bringing in, and that increases each year. But again, if we don't receive those health insurance increases that I've projected or state funding changes in a couple of years where we're getting more revenue, you know, it may extend that levy even longer. So I know I kind of feel like I'm a broken record sometimes by saying it's going to change, but it will. But we also want to try to continue to keep our programming that we have and give our kids the best education that we can for as long as we can. So that's our goal, and we try to save money wherever we can. I know Mr. Perry and I have been working to try to look at some things that maybe could save us some money. So we're always doing that. So I want to reassure the board that that's our goal. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions, just a go ahead. No. We were finished positive 800,000, right? And then, obviously, this is forecasting, and that's what we need to keep in mind. It's forecasting, it's not actuality, and otherwise, we look like we're running like the government. So thank you for your due diligence with the way you are tracking everything, and Mr. Perry for looking into ways to minimize our spending, but take care of what is needed to be done, because it will change.
Oh, absolutely.
But there'll be things that will come in, income that will come in, revenue that will come in to help balance that out. So just, it is a forecast, it's not actuality, and
Right.
we're good this year, and that can, and hopefully will happen. It will happen for this year too. So thank you both.
Yeah, I think, to his point, I appreciate your conservative approach to what you do know, and the rest is unknown. And you know, $800,000 sounds like a lot of money, but it's less than 1%.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, for us, it's not a lot of money.
And it was to the positive, so those are all great things.
Yep.
Right. Thank you, Nancy. This is very thorough work. Thank you for your diligence in putting this together. I have a couple of questions. So Ed Choice, are we completely,
It's not included in the forecast anywhere.
okay,
Because I've not heard anything to make me believe, at least in the next 2 years, well, this year and next year, that it's going to be back into play for us.
okay.
Have you?
No, but back to the point, anything can change, and, you know, in terms of our history with that choice, we've been taken by surprise on
Yep.
several different occasions, so, you know, it's not, we're not hearing anything right now, but that doesn't mean that we won't hear something in a few months, or 6 months, or a year. You just never know.
Yeah, that's my fear. I also had another question. I thought the John Peterson Scholarship was like a pass-through. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it is, but it used to be, I should say.
Okay.
Because we used to get funded for it, and then they would take that money away based on where those students attend school and send the money there. So now they are directly funding those scholarships to those other school districts. So we don't see that money either on the revenue side or the expenditure side anymore.
Okay. And so for our, excuse me, for the open enrollment kids, I thought that we were already receiving, I can't remember how much it was, but it was some equivalent to 6,000
That's
from.
per student.
Yes. Is that,
So now, with the new base cost methodology,
Yeah.
we're up to the 7,160.
7,000? Okay.
But remember, we also had open enrollment kids out.
Yes.
So those now are not part of our expenditures anymore because they are going directly to the funding is going directly to the
Directly
districts
to
that
the
they're going to. So again, students and seats is how every little head gets counted, and that's how we get funded now, which is great, honestly. It's a lot easier to understand.
Yeah.
But yes, enrollment does come into play much more now than it did in prior years.
Right, and we're at 8,900?
No, we're actually at, I believe in here, it's average daily membership. I think it's around 9123, if I remember correctly.
Average daily membership.
ADM, average daily membership.
Who knew we were running such
All
an
these
exclusive club?
acronyms are great.
So by and by, overall, you think that fair funding has basically put us in a better position? I think that's stated in here, actually.
Possibly, yes. Again, I don't know the whole picture yet, but
Okay.
it appears that we're receiving a little more money this year than we have in the past.
Right, because I know They give it on one hand and they take it away on the
Well,
other.
just like the student wellness and success money.
Right.
We're getting that money. It's just
Yeah.
not in the general fund right now. So
That's right.
they act like it's new for us. It's really not. We've already been receiving that money. So they've just shifted on where it's at and how I have to report it.
Is there any chance, and this is probably no, are we ever going to get anywhere with House Bill 901? Is phantom revenue ever going to?
House Bill 920?
920, thank you, yep. I mean, what's?
I don't know.
Because, you know, we never thought that I won't say never, but we thought that fair funding was going to basically be a long haul, the CUP, Patterson plan. And it happened in some form,
Some form, but not
some form,
the
not
way it was.
exactly the way we wanted it to be, but.
I mean, there's supposed to be a phase-in period over 6 years, I believe.
That's right, that is true.
And they're saying, just deal with the 2 years that we know about right now, because it could all go away after those 2 years. So
Yes.
what I originally actually had in the forecast for that phase-in, I've now backed off a little bit because I don't know that it's going to happen, according to the experts.
So we'll just have to see what happens. But no, good job.
There'll be an update in May.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, Ms. Lane, I just have one question for the public's knowledge. What's the recommended balance that we maintain? I know it's certain months of the year,
I mean, usually, well, 3 months' worth of expenses, basically,
is
but
what we should have.
it should, well, I always say the more we have, the better. I don't like to, but yes, so when you generally are approaching that, yeah, I mean, well before that is we would have to look at
Right.
either running a levy or cutting expenses. So luckily, we're not there yet. But yeah, that's, I mean, again, we don't wait till we're down to 3 months' worth of
Right.
expenses to start
Right.
talking about things that we need to do. So we'll continue to, I mean, I monitor it every day, almost, but it's on our radar.
Great. Well, thank you for all the time and effort you put into this, because I know it's,
It's fun.
yeah.
It is.
Well, thank you so much for keeping us informed about what's going on, because it's important that we know, because we have to make tough decisions. And if we don't know what my wife would say, the reallys,
Yeah.
it definitely helped us with that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Ms. Lane? Okay. All right, next item, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, our next item for discussion is regard to a board policy. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Before I start telling you about policy JED, I do want to just thank Mrs. Lane for her work on this as well, and just let people know that today is her birthday. So she is spending her birthday, and it's kind of amazing that Mr. Smith's birthday was yesterday.
Yes.
So
Let's
these
talk
are-
about that.
Our birthdays are
It's old
clumped.
news. It's old
Old
news.
news, but
Let's not live in the past. It's all about the present.
happy birthday to both of you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Happy birthday to you. Oh, that's
Yeah, I did sing tonight when she came in, Belina, and yours sounded much better than what mine did.
I agree with him.
Yes. Policy JED, it's student absences and excuses. This policy was actually just updated in September. When Mr. Crapo and Mrs. Geisler began looking at that, they wanted to make a couple additional changes. They added 2 medically excused absences that were left off of the previous policy, so we're adding them, that students may be, of course, excused from school due to medical or dental appointments and a death in the family. Other than that, we needed to update some language that talks about our steps we take when a student is truant as a result of House Bill 410. And then we made other simple changes to the language, adding designee to superintendent, making some of those decisions, and some other just simple language changes. Those are the changes in policy JED, student absences and excuses. Are there any questions about that policy?
Any questions for Mr. Martin? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.